back in November, Colchester United looked like a club in crisis. There was a period of anarchy in a 1-0 defeat at Crewe Alexandra, but what followed was a shock 3-0 victory over Doncaster under Matt Bloomfield, and that catapulted the U's up the leagues as they made progress. And even when Bloomfield left to return to Wycombe Wanderers as manager, Ben Garner continued the form and kept Colchester up comfortably thanks to good January investment. This year, the investment hasn't quite been there, and there are concerns over whether the squad has been given the attention that it needs under Robbie Cowling's ownership. So, can Colchester United continue to make some progress after the malaise of the last 15 years or so? A lot of work to be done. So can Colchester United break into the top half of League Two and possibly beyond this season? Well, to discuss all these things and more, I'm delighted to be joined by U's fans, Si and Liam. Good evening to you, gents. Thank you so much for your time. How are you keeping?
Yeah, good, thank you. It's nice to be back on chatting football.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks both of you for jumping on, especially Si, who joins us live from Tenerife. So that's certainly commitment.
Mm-hmm.
Coming to you first, Liam, how do you feel as a Colchester United fan right now?
It was a very good second half of last season. I don't think anyone will say that they leave that season rather kind of in a worse place than where we started it. Certainly, kind of you look at the first half of the season under Wayne Brown, and then kind of the start under Bloomfield, it was a rough ride. But since the start of 2023, a lot better. Garner's got us playing some good football. We've got some exciting talents there. Obviously, I'm sure we'll come on to those because that's always a hot topic when it comes to Colchester. But no, it's positive but cautious, I think, as well.
Positive but cautious. Si, I think it's fair to say so far that the indications are that the club's not necessarily going hell for leather in terms of recruitment. And that's not to say that I'm not expecting a few to come in over the next couple of weeks. But I guess Colchester are going to lean on their youth academy. And I guess the positive would be that it feels like the crop that you've got at the moment is possibly the most talented since maybe the mid-2010s that you had coming through.
Oh, definitely. I think so. When the transfer business has been a bit of a weird one this year. Normally, by now, we've either gone in for everyone and sort of got more quantity over quality, or we've managed to get a couple of injured loan signings that are actually not going to play till January and go back to their clubs. So, on that front, I think obviously we were linked to Harry McCurdy very strongly till he went back to pre-season up in Scotland. Obviously, had his injury scare, so that's been blown out of the water a little bit. I think, to be fair, with the squad we've got, as long as Chilvers and Juniors stay, plus the signings we got in January, I think we did a lot of our business in January with Matty J, Killer, all coming in. And I think there is quite a few junior players that maybe aren't as well known who are actually going to fit in really well. We've got Che Cooper's back in the squad now. He scored in our first pre-season game. Obviously, got Frankie Terry coming through, plus the two new signings we've got already. I think our squad's probably in a better place than we actually think it is. We need one or two signs, potentially a striker because is guaranteed to get over double-figure goals. And then I think it will come down to whether the Stoke thing with juniors is a go or if it's just more hype in the press, and whether Noah Chilvers stays. If those two stay, our squad's not actually that bad because the youth players we've got coming through will fit nicely into the system.
Well, let's hope that's the case. Liam, in one hand, I can see why a lot of Colchester fans will be really hoping that the likes of Chilvers and certainly Chamadou stay because they're such exciting talents. On the other hand, maybe from a sustainability perspective, I would almost want you to get a couple of million, say, for Chamadou, or at least get $1 million and a good sell on, because that's so important in the modern era for a sustainable football club. So how are you feeling about that at the moment?
Yeah, I think those are all very good points, and it goes without saying that those two are probably the two quality players in our team, and we're a worse team without them. I struggle to see the fact that the League Two Young Player of the Year is going to stay at a bottom end League Two Player of the club, by the end of the summer. I think he's certainly ready for top end League One football. I'm not quite sure pushing Championship yet, but he can sit in a development squad in Blackburn or Stoke or the other clubs he's been rumoured to. And I totally agree with you. It's not a bad thing to have some money in the bank. players can be replaceable. Certainly, I think that as long as we can get a good enough starting right wing back, and that is obviously a big if, you can't guarantee things, but I think that could be money well invested at the same time. Chilvers, I think, can still do a very strong job in League Two, of course, but I almost worry that perhaps he's hit his ceiling with us. I'm not sure how much better he's going to get with us. So again, would be very good to keep both of them, but I wouldn't be opposed to both of them being sold on for fees either. But obviously, if we do that, and it goes without saying, they have to be replaced. No excuses.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk about the about Robbie Cowling's ownership of Colchester, because it's always an interesting topic of conversation. I know previously you've spoken in defence of Robbie Cowling, and I can kind of understand why, because in an era where there is this sort of reckless spending, and there are these concerns over the future of clubs, I can kind of understand why you would almost lean towards someone that is reliable in lots of ways, that is going to keep you afloat, that does have a sustainable model. But I think that the feeling from a lot of fans at times is that it can feel like you're doing more to keep the bank balances in order, and maybe at the expense of things on the pitch. Obviously, we saw a lot of spending in January, which kind of mitigated some of those concerns. But where are you with it all right now?
So I think Robbie Cowling is very much like Marmite with the ColU fans. Some love him, some hate him. I personally have got a lot of time for him. He spent well in January. He went out after Wayne Brown had that obviously dreadful start to the season. Went external with a manager we've been calling out for years, really. Then Bloomfield leaving like he did, I think was quite a test for Robbie, because straight away he invested in the squad for Bloomfield. Bloomfield then left. He'd been burnt by an external appointment. What was he going to do? And bringing Garner in as another external appointment is hopefully proof that he has changed his tune. He said last season that he can spend the season sorting out his upper echelons of the club, with Dimitri coming in, getting Ross Embleton in, sort of things like that. And then towards the end of last season, beginning this season, it should be in the playing side that we look to develop. So, yeah, I think I've said it before, I'd rather have a club that's sustainable, that's maybe not doing as well, than have a club that's going out of its means, throws all its eggs in one basket. And then, well, you just got to look at Southend, how a local rival down the road, how badly an ownership model can go horribly wrong. No matter what we think about Colchester, it's not going to be Wrexham. We're not going to have people come in from America and buy it. No one in the Middle East probably knows where Colchester is, let alone the fact they want to invest in that club. So we've got to be very realistic at where we sit and who we are. So, as long as we keep doing what we're doing, going in the right direction, I think Robbie will actually start winning over a few fans and direction he's going. And even I think our biggest issue we've had so far this time is the fact that Ashley's gone. Simon Ashley's gone. He was one I was actually really keen to see kick on, especially if Chilvers was to leave. But then maybe Ashley leaving will mean Chilvers will stay. Chilvers
You got quite a low. Sorry, you got quite a low fee for Osama Ashley. Were you a little bit disappointed with that?
Not really, because I think that a lot of the deal comes into the add-ons plus the sell-on fee. Okay. And that's what's key at this level. Considering we took him on board this time last year as a nobody, so to speak. We got him on a free, so we've already made money on him. He gave us a good effort display last season, so you can't fault him for that. And we've made money out of him. So on that stage, no matter how low the fee was, it's still more than we paid for him. Of course, we didn't pay anything. And then I think if he does keep his development up, then obviously we've got the sell-on clauses and the bonuses we're going through there. So realistically, we need Chilvers to stay. Chilvers and Reid will play deeper with Matty J in a free roaming 10. I think will work quite well for our midfield.
Do you think Chilvers can take on that deeper role, Lim?
It's not to his strength, but I think kind of I was at the game on Saturday, our first pre-season game against Malden and Tiptree, and that seems to be the approach they might be going for. So in the first half, we played a 3-1-4-2 with Marley, Marshall, Miranda sitting back, and then Noah Chilvers and Che Cooper kind of ahead of him, who were both traditional number 10s. You'd expect them to be going forward a lot more than they'd go backwards. So I think perhaps that's the transition that Garner wants to make from a 3-4-1-2 to a 3-1-4-2. So perhaps that's with anticipation with Chilvers staying. Chilvers and Jay would be the definite starting candidates for that role, with perhaps Arthur Reed as the sitting, or Marley Marshall Miranda. So it's, as I say, it's not to his strengths, but he's not one of those number 10s that will just walk about up front. He likes to get stuck in. I think he quite likes the dirty side of the game as well. So I think give it a good run in that kind of number 8 role. He'd certainly adapts pretty quickly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, coming to that formation then, Si, Liam's there talked about Noah Chilvers and his work rate. Obviously, Matty J, I spoke to an Exeter City fan about him after they'd won promotion, and he said he was actually one of the hardest working players in the team, one of the top 2. I can't remember if he said he was the hardest working, because there was Timothy Jiang, but very hard working player. And I think that's going to be really important if you're going to play with 2 8s rather than 1 10. You need those 8s to do the groundwork of the midfielder and be part of the midfield at times, because you can get away with giving one number 10 free rein, but when you have 2 8s, they've both got to chip in and do a little bit of the legwork as well.
No, definitely. I think the big thing I'm pleased about the formation is we seem to be sticking with 3 at the back. It's something we've been playing much more to our strengths for the last part of last season, and in a modern game, that is the best formation to look to play. Also, what's quite interesting from what I've heard from Malden Tipcher game is that at times the middle of the 3 was actually looking to push more forward into the midfield role to boost the midfield, a bit like obviously Johnny Stones has been doing for City. So I don't know if we're trying to sort of, Ben's thinking he's going to be the League 2 pet this year and turn one of our centre backs into midfielder, or what, I don't know where he's going to go. But no, I think Chilvers does like to pick the ball up deep and drive forward with it. I think if you've got a player like that alongside, say, Matty J, who's given maybe a bit of a freer role to roam around and to cause chaos where he can, will actually play to both their strengths. What we do need to then do is obviously look at who the 2 we've got up front are going to be, in regards to, we need a fast guy who's going to do running and a guy who's going to do the hold-up play. Speedy and Kindy will play well together like that. It's then looking if anybody else comes in, which side of it they're going to take. Because John Kindy will give you, always put shift in. Obviously, he's getting on a bit, and he's not as fast as maybe he'd like to be. Whereas Tavidi at times was getting pushed over the pitch a little bit, so needs someone with a bit of strength next to him. So I think, it's formation-wise, we should start how we finished last season with 3 at the back and then pushing up their wing-backs. If Junior goes, we've got Jason Fevier, who potentially can drop into that role. Obviously, we've got a new left wing-back from Swindon, I know how do I say his name, sorry, he has staked that was his favourite role. Plus, Kazim's still there. We have got quite a few options to push ourselves forward. And then potentially, if say Kazim's going to play at wing back, you can push someone else into midfield. So there's a lot of fluid formation changes. And as Liam said, having maybe Chilvers and Matty J playing more forward together will actually play to both their strengths.
Yeah, let's hope that's the case. Liam, when it comes to Samson to David, is there a world in which David gets into the gym in pre-season, builds up a bit of upper body strength, and maybe because of that becomes a bit more aggressive at certain moments, and actually adds goals to his game as well? Because I think that was the one thing that was missing from his game at times last season. Because he's still young, isn't he, Samson David? So could he go up another level this year?
Definitely. I think kind of him and Ashley were kind of the 2, Chilvers and Chamadou got all of the praise, but Ashley and Tavide really weren't far behind at all in terms of their performances last year. He is, and I say the same sentence with Samson Tavide every time, in that he elevates so many of our players. He makes them play better just by causing problems, by just taking on people and creating space. Definitely goals need to come a bit more regularly. He got one again on Saturday. It will be against kind of a lower non-league team, but that's a good start to pre-season.
Sure.
He's formed a good partnership with Akinde. That seems to be the 2 that we're most likely to start the season with, unless we have anyone high profile come in. But yeah, I really think this is Tavide's year. He doesn't have to be a 20-30 goal striker. He wants to be hitting double figures, but the amount of, I think he got about 7 or 8 assists last year with 2 goals. So you wouldn't expect that from a striker, but his play definitely isn't always best worked out by his goals that he scores.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've got probably four players who could hit double figures next season. You've got Akinde, you've got Tavid, you've got May J, who can also pop up with some goals, and you've got Noah Chilvers as well, who can break into the box as well. So I think if you can get 15 off Akinde and 10 off the other three, roughly speaking, then that kind of accounts for maybe not having that 20 plus goal man. But obviously, Si, the situation up top is an interesting one because you've also got Tom Hopper in the mix, who's a decent centre forward for this level. Do you see it as being a case of Hopper or Akinde, and it's probably unlikely that they'll start simultaneously?
I think it will be one or the other, purely because they are quite similar players. They like to play with the back to goal, hold the ball up, play off a runner. So Hopper, when he was signed, I had great hopes for him. I was going to really be the sort of forward that really did kick on our front line. He hasn't really started to fire yet. There is rumours he's been linked to Grimsby in this window, so I'll be surprised if we do sell him. So Akinde will be my number one choice over Hopper. But if Hopper can start finding some form, it'd be very good to have him, get 60 minutes out of Akinde, bring Hopper on for 30 minutes, maybe next game, 60 from Hopper, 30 from Akinde, you'd be able to swap them over in that sort of role. I think one of the players, you're going to love this one, I think we are going to miss, is going to be Colchester. Now, I know obviously you're not a massive fan of his. Every time I come on and chat to you about him, can't sing his praises high enough. But I think he's going to be his temperament. And also, he got his stunning goal last season as well. He pops up with goals. Nothing that guy can't do at the moment. Well, except for Colchester, sadly.
But I suppose, Liam, that the Cole Skews lost, does that not open things up more for Marley Marshall Miranda, perhaps, to really establish himself in that sort of sitting, conducting type of role at the base of Ben Garner's midfield?
I really hope so. We definitely need to add at least one player in that position for competition. But he got a few games under, I can't remember whether it was under Brown or Bloomfield towards the start of last season. But he looked really strong. I think I remember putting a tweet out after the Brentford Cup game we had last August saying that I thought he was probably the best player on the pitch against a Premier League team, which obviously is very high praise for a guy who is probably only making kind of his fifth appearance or something like that. He really is that. What we used to see in Tom Lapsley, he will scrap and he will scrap and he will fight and he will work. I think he's actually got a little bit more going forward as well compared to what Lapsley used to have. So I have high hopes for him. The only concern is that his lack of game time. If we were going to consider him a guy that we want to play 40 games this year.
Is he going to be technical enough to play the style Ben Garner wants? Because obviously if he's going to play as the pivot in a 3-1-4-2, you're obviously going to need to be able to collect the ball off the defence and then keep things ticking over. Do you think he's got that in his locker?
Yeah, I think so. We haven't seen loads of him going forward. He did score a cracking goal against Stevenage, I think it was last year. But he is definitely more of a, almost kind of, he's learnt off Cole Skews, just sit in front of the defence and kind of go wherever the ball is and chase it down in some ways. And certainly a lot more energy than you'd get from kind of a 36-year-old. So, but talent-wise, I think if we were to give him a full season in a mostly starting capacity, he'd learn a lot from it. But yeah, I think we need that senior pro to really make him work for that place as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Si, you mentioned earlier that one of the possibilities of how Ben Garner's going to set Colchester up is playing with a middle centre-back that kind of almost a bit like a libero, if that's not too sort of swanky a term. Someone that can sort of carry the ball into midfield and then start playing from there. Do you think you've got a personnel who can do that in-house, or do you think that's something you're going to need to recruit for?
Again, I think it's because we've not really tried it. We're not going to know. We've got to look at these pre-season games to see, if a player's willing to push forward. Lawrence apparently was quite good against Maud at the weekend. From the feedback that I've had, he was able to, was willing to carry the ball forward and push into midfield. So there's potential there for him. I think as well as the more we try it, maybe like Frankie Terry will come into the equation back to Joe. He can do it quite well. With this maybe a bit of an unknown. I think the two issues we've got with Miranda, and also one that could be Junior's stumbling block as well, is their discipline at times. And Miranda was very bad for, you get a run in the team, he got himself sent off. Then he went and played for the R23s when Bloomfield was watching, managed to get himself sent off in that game as well. And I know that a lot of it is passion, and it's obviously channeling it to the right position. And same with Junior. Yes, he's got all the hallmarks of a very, very good player. I couldn't go higher up easily. But when he topped most of the charts this last season for discipline, and even his last, potentially what we saw was his last game, the ColU show, he managed to get himself sent off for 2 yellow cards after the final whistle went up at Doncaster. So there's that side of it. I think we've got to look to iron out of a lot of our youth players is keeping cool, know when to be passionate, when to just walk away, so to speak.
Yeah, well, hopefully they can sort of curb that side of their game. Lim, I want to come to you about the structural side of Colchester United at the moment, because there's a perception, I think, within the game of Colchester United, from the outside, I hasten to add, that it's a little bit too many cooks, because you've got Tony Humes is still involved, Steve Ball's still involved, and also you've got a sporting director, Dimitri Hajko. Is there concern that there's a lot of people who have a say in operational matters and maybe too many people in order to be efficient at times?
Yeah, quite possibly. And that's certainly a view that was held internally, I think, as well by some of our fans. There is a lot of people. I think kind of Halajko and Embleton seem to be becoming kind of that closer role to Cowling now. I'd be lying if I said I knew exactly what Humes and Ball do on a daily basis. As you say, there are a lot of different titles going about for what you'd expect to be near enough the same sort of job. So, but I think kind of having those internal candidates who know the club throughout, they know the players. I think as much as we kind of add that there's some history there with Humes and Ball having failed as managers effectively, but they do know the club. They know the players. The players have obviously grown up under these guys as well, because they were part of the academy before they were in the first team. So I think having that real internal link to the players, but working with Halajko and Embleton, who obviously have a lot of experience outside of Colchester and at higher levels as well, I think that can definitely be perceived as a good thing at the same time.
What do you think, Si?
No, I think that is a lot of the problem, because they're failed managers. Everyone decided they're not doing very well whatever job they're currently doing at the club. But I know for a fact there's at least 2 or 3 players that have joined just because of the respect they had for what Steve Ball, basically how he sold the club, what he was doing on the training ground. Things like, I know he's very instrumental in bringing Connor Hall to the club, which obviously was a great marquee signing, managed to get away. Whoever signed that off for Port Vale needs their head tested. They really do. Let him go. So, yeah, I think there'll always be a little bit of it, because they're failed managers. Obviously, people perceive it as, they're failed in management, they're being promoted to a director role or something else. But like I did say at one of our sort of things, I had a bit of a argument with someone at one of our Q&As. The people moaned about what they actually do. It's like, yeah, but just because they might be poor at one thing doesn't mean they're not very good at something else. Just because we don't understand what their roles are doesn't mean they're not doing it well. We should still support what happens. It's a bit like, I couldn't tell you what the CEO of Sainsbury's does, but I still quite happy to go for that. Maybe we don't always need to know all the time, but because football being industry is, every fan, me as well at times, feels they've got this right. We pay our season tickets, we pay for this, we pay that. It's almost like we think we've got more of a right to know than we actually have. And it's just getting that balance between what the club tells us and what they want to keep secret. Because, not their role to do, if it is checked.
No. I think you make a great point there, Si. But I also think that I just don't feel like you can compare football to another industry, because football is so unique, because people have far more of an emotional connection to their clubs than to Sainsbury's or whatever their local supermarket of choice is. I just feel like I don't feel like the comparison can quite be made, because people just are fascinated in these sorts of things. Of course, the club are entitled to not say, but I think fans are entitled to ask, certainly. In terms of the rest of the squad, then, Liam, one thing I'm excited about when it comes to Ben Garner is the opportunities his appointment gives you in terms of the loan market. This is something he did very well in when he was at Swindon Town. I think because he was such a highly rated coach at youth level, he's got some excellent contacts. And although we haven't had any movement in the loan market just yet, I'll be quite excited that maybe once players who have at Premier League and Championship clubs had a chance, they've had a look at them in pre-season, maybe when August comes around, you're going to get a few of those loans through the door, and hopefully they're going to be the quality ones.
Yeah, you'd certainly hope so. And we're still in kind of uncharted waters in the fact that this is our first summer with an external manager for probably the best part of 10 years. So, obviously we had Bloomfield made a lot of good signings in January, but summer and winter are kind of two different ballparks when it comes to a transfer window. There's been a lot of rumours previously with Garner with his former players. So I know kind of, as Si mentioned earlier, Harry McCurdy was someone that was linked to us. Johnny Williams, again, before he went to Gillingham, I think it was, and Jojo Wallacott, the keeper from Charlton as well, have all kind of been names that I've seen battered about. So, there's no smoke without fire. So you'd like to think, and I should say really the obvious one, Ian Dolo was a perfect example of that already through the door. So I think it's safe to assume there's more similar deals in the works somewhere. But obviously, we've also got a loanee in from Southampton. So a recently relegated Premier League club, that's not a bad contact to have at all. So if we can still sign kind of, 2 or 3 players from similarly natured clubs, kind of the same sort of level, then that can only be a good thing.
No, I think add to that as well. I think Dimitri's background with West Ham massively helps as well. That's where he actually came from.
Yeah.
Greenbridge has come in from there as well. He's got to have contacts within the Premier League academies, but also we've seen some of these players before and know who's got talent, who hasn't, and where to go. So I think, like Liam said, it will take a bit of time, but once the dust has settled, hopefully we'll get a few players in.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, on Nico Lawrence, he's someone who had incredible reviews at Torquay United last season, bearing in mind they were quite a struggling side as well. I think, okay, it's in a higher league, but also I think there's probably going to be more continuity of style and probably a more suitable style for him under Ben Garner rather than under Gary Johnson, who's a much older manager from a sort of slightly different era. So I'm incredibly excited to see how Nico Lawrence gets on. Si, how many more players do you think you're going to need between now and the end of the window?
Realistically, how long is a piece of string? And if you can get decent players come through, you're going to take anyone, aren't you, if they're good enough? I think we need another goalkeeper. I just panicked with the fact we've lost a hirer. I was hoping we were going to get Smith back because it's been released by Arsenal, but that's gone a bit quiet on that front. I need a goalkeeping coach now as well, so potentially we could bring an older goalkeeper in as a number 2 who's potentially wants to get into coach and he can do both jobs. Something. So if Junior goes, then we have to look at the right back 3. Someone to actually come as a right wing back, I suppose, having to shoot someone in. Yeah, then really it's just a striker. Other than that, I do personally feel that we've got enough youth players who are good enough to step up, spending last season alone in men's football. Yes, it was non-league, but it's still been aggressive and still hard to play against, so they can step up. And even striker-wise, still got Hutchinson, who's we will be looking at for a couple of years, potentially to make the jump up. So for me personally, a goalkeeper, if Chambers goes, a right wing back, and then looking, if he's not going to go with youth up top, a striker.
Yeah, well, we'll see what ColU are able to bring in. Coming to you then, Liam, I've got to make my 1 to 24 predictions in a few weeks, so it's going to be interesting to see what the responses to that's going to be. What will be the reason for me to be hugely optimistic about Colchester and put them down as a side that can be comfortably top half and maybe even threaten the playoff places?
I'll get ready to type my angry tweet to you then. No, there's definitely a lot of positives, and I think you put us around kind of 2021 last year, which was probably a fair reflection. In hindsight, I think I would have pinned us probably about 5 or 6 places higher, but you were right on that one. I'd like to think that let's be real, League Two is a very difficult league this year, and I think that's where my cautiousness comes from, is that I think we've made big strides, but there's obviously a lot of clubs who've made bigger ones. New teams to the league like Wrexham, Notts County, they're going to get a lot of coverage, but teams like Gillingham improved massively. Teams like Barrow were coming out of nowhere and really starting to impress that you just wouldn't have seen coming. Someone like that you'd be expecting to finish ahead of for I think this is our 7th or 8th season in League Two now, so you'd like to think we'd be better equipped than we are. But No, there's definite positives. There's also obviously a lot of young players, a lot of talent there. Players like Arthur Reed getting a full season, players like Connor Hall, they're a lot better than what we started last season with. Our centre backs are almost kind of a perfect picture of that. I imagine we probably started something like Chambers, Eastman, Smith last year, whereas now we've got Lawrence, Dallison, Hall.
That's a good
Kelleher.
pairing. That's good.
That's kind of when you look at it as to where you were and what you've got now. That's really what the positives are, I think, from a Colchester United fan. As I say, you just kind of got to be wary at the same time that there's a lot of talent in this league now.
Yeah, of course. A lot of optimism there from that point of view. I think Connor Hall's going to be one of the best centre backs in the league. So really encouraging that. So what will be the reason for me to be slightly cautious about Colchester and say this could be another relegation battle?
It's Colchester. No. It's a tough one because we've got into the last 3 seasons, I think, on paper, they're very good squads, who should be playing higher than they are. We should be finishing higher than we have them. This year, as Liam's rightly pointed out, it's a very, very strong League Two. Clubs that have come down, the clubs that have come up, are obviously going to be in and around the mixes. But I don't know, it's so difficult because personally, I think we should be aiming for top 10. The squad we've got, the continuity of how Garner should be taking forward, and the players we brought in should be good enough. But it always seems to be something that derails us, whether it's the manager leaving or, we get a couple of really key injuries. I think that's the problem we've got a little bit, is the fact that it is Colchester. And no matter what we seem to do, we move in the right direction, 1 step forward, 2 steps back at times. And personally, I think we're going to finish top 10. There was always that little bit of doubt of, at times it's always, it's going too well. For example, we're going to have a good pre-season. 2nd of August, both Noah and Junior get really good offers for them. Off they go. And straight away, we're like 3 days away from the start of the season, and we've lost 2 key players to the team. Straight, that's going to knock everyone for 6. So, yeah, it is. I want to be optimistic. I mean, to be like we're going to be the Stevenage in that last season, this season, go from bottom to top. Off we go. Always a chance, but there's always that other shoulder saying to you, be careful what you wish for. Then what's happened the last few seasons? Wait until Christmas to see where you are.
What's your case? You sound hopeful there, though, that Colchester can finish in the top 10. What's your case for Colchester finishing in the top 10, Si?
If you look how we finished last season, I think if we'd have got Garner in when Bloomfield came in, with the signings he got and how we were starting to play the football we're doing, the results we're coming up with, we actually started to hold our own against a lot of teams, and even teams that came to us that we potentially lost to, who ended up being promoted and stuff like that. You couldn't really tell a massive difference in ability to where we were playing, how we were playing against them. We started developing our own style. And our way of playing, we weren't just chasing games left, right, and Chelsea and trying to change everything at once. This is how we play. We set up how we play, and we'd say to take it to teams. I think if we could have had another 3 or 4 months of last season, we'd have finished much higher at the table than we actually did. Yes, I was trying to get the Geneva were improving at the same time other teams were, so it's all ifs and buts. But I think looking at that and looking at how Garner seems to go already into, yes, it's only 1 game, but it's already looking to play a similar place last year. They went away to Spain for a pretty warm weather training camp. It's something we've not done for years, really. So obviously Robbie Cowley must be backing him, giving the best possible set of tools. So I think it's the first summer we've gone into where actually we're preparing as we mean to go on. We've done a professional start of pre-season. No, not too many players have left. We've got a good squad, good youngsters coming through. And the manager seems to know what he wants and where we're going. And the fact that we haven't rushed out for signings, I think is actually a good sign. We're looking for a certain player or a certain type of player rather than just, let's get 15 in and hope out of those 15, 2 are going to be good, kind of thing. So, yeah, that's why I'm quite optimistic of finishing top 10. Ideally, you want to obviously aim for playoffs, aim for automatics, but I think we need to spend a year to just get mid-table, top 10, establish ourselves. Then a lot of the January signings are on 2.5-year contracts, so we'll have a year left next summer. Then to next summer, then to look to strengthen, replace, and then push on again, and just take that next step into playoffs and automatics.
Yeah, well, let's hope you can do that. I certainly think that League Two will be weaker in future seasons than it will be in this one. So if you can have that type of season that you've described, Si, where you're putting the foundations in place to maybe challenge, to build a side that can challenge in future seasons, I think that could be a really productive 12 months. So let's hope that's the case. Gents, such a pleasure to chat ColU with you this evening. Or this afternoon. What time is it in Tenerife, Si?
I know it's the same time as back home, so it's 7:30. We've just gone
Oh, half
7:30
seven. Okay,
over
this
there, so
evening still for you. All right,
I would
brilliant.
love, I would love to say I'll be up hours waiting for this, but yeah, no, I'm not that. Sorry, not that dedicated.
Brilliant stuff. Thanks to you, Liam. Thanks to you, Si. This has been the EFL Debate Colchester United Summer Deep Dive, and we'll see you again very soon.